And believe me, I'm going to say this, that some of the schooling that I went through, and I'll make a broad generalization here. If I'm wrong about this, please let me know in the comments, right? I would love to be able to go back and forth with you on this. But I remember when I was going through my training, when I was going through my acting training, that was here in Los Angeles. I was at Cal State University of Los Angeles over in Alhambra. Here I was training as an actor, professional actor. We never covered the business, and we were in the middle of Hollywood, right? The thing that I would constantly hear teachers say all the time was like, well, yeah, but when you get in the real world, yeah, but when you get in the real world. And I just remember being so frustrated with that, which is like, okay, yes, we're in this what hermetically sealed environment where we can put on plays and get audiences and get reaction and put butts in seats and all that stuff, and to be able to do the type of material that we want to do. And then we'd always get that feeling, we'd always get that response of just like, well, out in the real world, you can't really do this. You won't be able to make a living doing this. I remember one of the probably one of the coolest experiences that happened for me. It was, man, it was a breakneck last year for me when I was at Cal State LA. Because when I was at Cal State LA, a couple of different things happened. I was having this itching because I'd done a ton of work. I probably had worked on, I feel like when I counted it once, like in the time period that I was at Cal State LA in those 4 years, I think I worked on like 27 different productions. Like it was nuts. I was doing like play after short project. I mean, it was just nuts, breakneck speed. And I remember when I got towards the very end of my stay out at Cal State LA, I remember I was at a point where I was just going, you know what? I need to be doing something in the industry, even if I'm like working at a theater and just like, pushing a broom or a mop or something like that. I actually need to be in this and making money while I do this, right? To at least learn my way up. God bless him, man. Jose Cruz Gonzalez, who was one of my teachers back then, he also worked regularly down at South Coast Repertory in Costa Mesa. And he said, listen, they have this children's theater touring production that they do. You might be right for it. I can introduce you to the casting director that's down there and the director of the show that's down there. And he warned me. He said, listen, I'm just going to warn you, like if you get this, there's a good chance you might not be able to finish out like your last quarter here. Cause like, you may have to put off your last quarter in order to finish out school. I went down, uh, ended up auditioning. They dug me. Martha McFarland was the casting director at the time. J.D. Keller was the director. They hired me for their touring show that they were going to be doing in the spring. Right, it was starting in the spring. Remember, it started in January, and gosh, it started in January, and it just happened. My first day of rehearsal was right after the huge earthquake had happened down here in LA. Um, but I remember I got that and I ended up leaving a part-time job that I was doing. I was working at Pier One Imports, which is for like a furniture, um, dining, rugs, whatever, a whole bunch of mishmash, knickknack stuff. I've been working there forever, and I went over to this job. It was my first professional job as an actor. It got me into Actors Equity. But I remember I was doing that show, then I was also going to school as well because I'd figured out a way to make both of those things happen at the same time. And as I got towards the end of that quarter, like around that same year too, me and a couple other students, one of my friends had a relationship with the DoubleTree Hotel that was in Pasadena, and he was able to make an arrangement for us to put on kind of like a dinner type show down at the Pasadena DoubleTree Hotel in one of their banquet rooms, and we put on a production of Room Service, which is like a comedy, 1930s comedy. The Marx Brothers had done a film on it, but it was based on a play, which we did, sort of a farce comedy from the 1930s. I remember that whole, and this was a thing that we were doing separate outside of school. So in that entire last year, not only was I putting on a production where we're like putting this to the test of like, can we produce a show outside of school where we're actually charging tickets and making money for it. Then I was also hired as a professional actor while I was also finishing up school at the same time and just like doing all these things at the same time. My point was this was that no one and this I'm not blaming my teachers or my educational environment, right? No one was in a point where no one was at a point where they were just going to, oh yeah, well here's how you do it. You just go do this and this and this. I had to experiment and figure out what was going on. What was I doing? You know, um, making mistakes along the way. So many stupid mistakes along the way, but then also having some incredible learnings from doing that as well. Uh, my point with this story is that if you're watching this, you're creative, right? You're doing something. You're writing, or you're trying to make films, or you're trying to do something, right? And there's a part of you that's been driven to do this, and you want to get this stuff out into the world. And the fact is, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's going to come in and all of a sudden like pluck you out of the blue and just go, "Oh, don't worry, I'll save you. Here you go. Oh, fantastic, kid. What fantastic work. You know what? Don't worry. You sit back. I'll take care of it. I'll promote you. I'll put you out there. You know, I'll make sure that you get into something where you make tons and tons of money." Usually doesn't happen that way.